You are listening to the Little Psychic Podcast with June Mack, which was formerly known as the Fully Woo Podcast. I hope you enjoy. Hi there, I'm your host June Mack, and you're listening to the Fully Woo Podcast. I'll be talking about all the fun woo-woo things in a down-to-earth, bright, light-hearted and easy to navigate way. Hopefully, I'll be able to help you ignite and light the way on your own spiritual journey and evolution too. Today's episode is all about the magic of intuition, that gut feeling, your internal navigation system, our heart compass, the importance of listening to it, and why much of the time we are required to leap without knowing what lies ahead and where each path is going to take us. In this episode, I talk about how we can build on our own gut feelings and the trust needed to take action on our own intuitive guidance, as well as some of my favorite personal success stories in regards to following my own intuition. I really hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by the Light Seeker Circle. The Light Seeker Circle is your spiritual learning library and psychic development space, a membership which brings you community, new content and live readings every single month, plus a woo-woo development archive of spiritual content which is already in there and ready to watch instantly. Masterclasses, meditations, activations, and programs on intuition, mediumship, card reading, empath and energy maintenance, plus so much more. Lower price point, no lock-ins. Check out the Light Seekers Circle via junemack.com/programs. Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Fully Woo Podcast. I'm June Mack, intuition mentor, psychic and energy healer, doing my best to put a modern spin on spirituality, taking it from serious and down in the dumps to seriously fun. Oh gosh, sorry, I don't know why I just said that. In today's episode, I'm talking about probably my number one asked about subject, which is intuition. Everyone is always asking how they can improve on theirs, why it's important, how to build on it. And the answer to how to improve on it is probably to listen to it once in a while. And I know that this can be hard. I guess when we've been brought up a lot of our lives doing the opposite to being taught than how to listen to it. It's, for example, it's not so much these days, but I remember when I was a kid in school, for example, there was this kid he was a really good student, and he was really smart, right? But to listen or to learn or to focus, I noticed that he always had to move, or he sort of rocked backwards and forwards, or he had to fidget. And he was just going with his intuition, right? He was doing with what felt good for him. This was how he focused in. This was how he zoned in. But my particular teacher at the time always told him to sit still or sit on your bottom or stop disrupting the class. And the thing was, I don't think he was disruptive at all. I think he was just doing her nut in by constantly moving. And he was still getting his work done. I just noticed, and now when I think back on it, he just had to move, and he was using intuitive feelings to do what felt good in order for him to actually focus on his work or to self-regulate or whatever it is that he needed to do. And his intuition in that, situation was being shut down. I know that so much wouldn't be as much of a thing these days, but I remember, things like that. And when you're a kid, you just we follow our gut. We want to roll in the mud because it feels good. When we don't get what we want, we throw tantrums. Not saying that that's a great thing, but just an example of, things that we might do to follow our gut when we're a kid. We follow our intuition a lot. And, we're taught things like the right thing to do is to work really, really hard to make money. You've got to work really hard. You've got to be hustle. There's all this glamorization around working in with the hustle. 9 to 5 stable job is the responsible thing to do. Even if for some people that feels good, and for other people working a 9 to 5 job does not feel good, it goes against every grain in their body. But we have this conditioning sometimes, even from my own family, my own mum thinks that's a responsible thing to do. Or if that's, if she had her way, that's probably what she would have me doing. But the thing is, she's awesome, right? She lets me do my thing. She's learned to let go a while ago. So I do believe that not all of us, for example, are meant to work a 9-to-5 job. If you love your 9-to-5 job, that is amazing. For some of us, it doesn't feel great. For me, for example, I'm one of those people. I never want to go back to working a 9-to-5 job. That's not something that really interests me, but I can see if that's great for you, go ahead and do that because everyone's different, right? I never want to go back to a 9-to-5 job. And since I haven't been doing that, I have never been happier. But what actually inspired me for this intuition episode was a recent success in listening to my own intuition that I wanted to be able to share with you. So maybe I'll tell you a little bit about that story first, and because I'm really excited for one, and then get into talking a little bit more about intuition and following your intuition. So if you follow me on social media, you may have seen that I recently signed my first book deal or book publishing deal, which is so really, really excited. You might not have seen that, but I'm telling you now. And oh my goodness, I am just so, so excited. I'm so, so grateful. I just cannot even describe. So if you haven't seen it, I've literally done one post, so maybe you haven't. What it is I actually signed a children's book deal, and some of my closest friends were even surprised by this news because honestly, I didn't tell too many people about it. It was one of those things that I think was just meant so much to me and was so special to me that I kind of felt, which honestly is the opposite thing to do in terms of manifesting. So don't take my advice for it. This is just my silly human self. Damn being human, sometimes. But it was kind of like one of those things where, oh my goodness, if this doesn't work out, I'm actually going to be like so shattered because it means so much to me. So I'm just not going to tell anyone. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter because only I knew about it, which totally is the wrong thing to do. Don't go by that example. But also it's probably something that I'm one of those people that has my finger in so many pies. It's quite common also for me to forget about all the little things that I'm doing and the little things that I've been working on anyway. So, sometimes I even forget to tell my husband some things and he's like, wait, what? What's this new business thing you're doing? I'm like, oh, haven't I told you? And he's like, oh, what? You hired a VA. When did that happen? Hang on. What's her name? Who is it? How many hours a week is she doing? Wait, who's this person you're collaborating with that I just saw on Instagram? We haven't even spoken about that. And it's not because I'm purposely hiding things. It's just that, honestly, I just forget because I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. I'll do that. Why don't I start this? I've always got these, crazy drop-ins going on. But anyway, the kids' book. So this children's book, it's actually co-written by, or we've done it together. It's a project that we've worked on together. The lovely Kelly Norman, who at this point does not have a public profile, but she better start working on that because she's going to be out there soon. She's going to have a published book, a children's book, which is so exciting and so awesome. And Kelly is actually a very, very talented children's author. But you want to hear the funny thing about me and Kelly is that we have never actually even met each other because Kelly lives in Brisbane, but we have collaborated on this story together. And how I actually know her, I think it was around April last year. She jumped on one of my very first live card readings that I ran inside the Enchantress Circle, which is my free Facebook group of spiritual space. For anyone that isn't a part of it, jump on in. And I can't remember exactly what I said in this card reading because I can't remember if I've mentioned it on here, but a lot of the time when I'm channeling messages, I don't remember a lot of what comes through. Just little bits and pieces because I guess I'm kind of in and out of being me and being a pipe or a channel for the information. But I do remember that I pulled the creativity card for her and she tells me, well, from what she part of it she's told me, she's filled me in on, and part of it I remember, but I do remember actually seeing her writing, like sitting down and writing. And I did happen to guess that she was some type of writer during the live reading. And when I took a guess that she was a writer and she confirmed on the live that yes, she actually was a kids book writer, I actually had that gut feeling, or your intuition, or whatever you like to call it, wherever it is that you feel it. I had this instant surge in my body, and I'm feeling it now because I'm talking back to it, that said, take note of this moment, or take note of this person right here, because there's something that's going to come from the two of you together at some point in the future, right? So the funniest feeling, it's so hard to explain, intuitive gut feelings, because it's something that is not from our human self. To describe it in a human way is really, really hard, but I'll try and do my best. I guess it was a claircognizance, which if you listen to my other podcast episodes, means your psychic sense of knowing. I just knew I need to take this note of this person and keep her in the back of my mind, because she was going to be very, very useful to me at some point in the future. So I did. I felt in my gut that she was important. So I remembered her. I remembered what she did. I remembered her name. And a lot of the times, especially in those live card readings, I don't take notice of the name so much. Like obviously when I'm speaking to you, yes, but then afterwards I couldn't tell you. A lot of the time I couldn't tell you who was on, what I said about that. And it was so funny, like everything really, how things just work out and the universe, puts things in place, is how she actually came into my group, the Enchantress Circle. And I remember this was another person that I had connected with had told me that during a meditation, she was told to add some of her friends into the group, right? So someone else was told to add Kelly in to the Enchantress Circle, which she did. And how this has all worked out over a year later is just crazy, right? The universe just has your back, And I remembered her name, and she ended up booking in a reading with me, herself and her sister, two lovely, lovely, lovely people. And I learned on a deeper level how amazing and how incredible Kelly's work was, and how beautiful it was that she did. And most importantly, what a beautiful person that she was too, like to the core, just a lovely, lovely person. And from that reading, we became Facebook friends. And she started sending me a little bit of her work, because I love reading and I love writing, and I loved reading it. And I just thought it was so beautiful, everything that she did. So there was that. I also had this idea for quite a while now. I'm not sure if it it did come in before I knew Kelly. Without giving away too much about what the actual book is about, because I'm not actually sure how much we're allowed to say yet. We've just signed the contract. I'm just not sure what the deal is with that. So I had this idea for quite a few years, that something was needed to help kids process and kind of give them a better understanding of what happens to us after we pass. The idea came from actually a very close friend that I have, who unfortunately she lost her beautiful son. He was only 6 weeks old and he passed away, which was just an awful situation. That was so hard for them and, everybody around them. It was tragic. And my lovely friend had told me about how she had been trying to find a book, a kid's book, to explain to her daughter. So this is her lovely son who passed away. This will probably make it easier if I do use their names. I have got their permission, but I was trying to find a way to say it maybe without using their names, but it might be easier. So his name was Hamish, beautiful boy who passed away at 6 weeks old. And my friend was trying to explain to Hamish's sibling, or to explain to her daughter, what had happened to her brother. And she was saying how tough it was at the time. She wanted to find a book, and it was so tough, or it was hard to find a book of this manner. And that stuck in my mind from years and years ago, like somebody needs to make this book. And this was before even I started doing, like I've always been spiritual. For those of you that have listened to my other podcast episodes, you would know. But as I've started doing what it was that I do, and knowing that our energy does go on, after our human physical self is not here. The message and the importance behind helping, children know that we are not gone. That idea or that need for this type of book became stronger and stronger. And there are some out there. I don't know the names of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there is other amazing books out there. But it was always one of those ideas that kept just coming back up. And this is a perfect example of intuition. If you have this idea or this dream about yourself or this vision that keeps on coming up, no matter how many times you swat it away or say, that's ridiculous, that doesn't make sense, who am I to think that I can do something like that? That is most definitely your intuition or your spirit guides telling you this is something that you are supposed to do. If you have an idea or a desire to do something and it doesn't go away and it keeps being brought up into your attention, you're most likely supposed to be acting upon this damn thing. So when Dad passed away at the start of this year, oh my goodness, this idea just was screaming in the back of my mind, especially because my own youngest daughter, right, she's only 3 years old. And she still thinks Grandpa, so my dad, is in the dirt because their mind cannot wrap around the idea of, heaven or whatever it is that you believe in. So I was like, oh my goodness, this book is so needed. This book is so needed. Everybody, unfortunately, has to experience grief, death at some point in their lives. It's going to happen. We need to create this book. So fast forward, Kelly jumped on a live, another live that I was doing in the Enchantress Circle, and she actually won a free mediumship reading from me because I'm just practicing at this point. Let's not go into mediumship again, my nemesis. And so she had a free mediumship reading with me, and at the end of this reading, we were just chatting, and again, my intuition piped up, and whoever, my spirit guides were like, tell her your idea. Tell her this idea about your book. Screaming at me again, basically, like it's just that you need to talk to her about this book. And when I was explaining to her this idea, I just saw her face change and light up. And she just said she was literally, before we went on that live, just sitting there and thinking to herself, what is my next book idea? Like, what is it? And then we'd had this, conversation and this had come up. And I told her my idea. And I was thinking, in my head, I was like, look, just tell Kelly, and it's something that we could probably do in the future. But from then on, Kelly really just spearheaded the whole thing. And she just went gung-ho, much more progressive than I would have been. And she had the first draft to me in a matter of it was like a week, or it might have 2 max. And since then, we've just been back and forth, sending ideas back and forth, and had online meetings or whatever, and of to how we can create this. And finally, we had the final draft, or before we were going to start sending it into publishers. And it was so special. I remember the day I received it, I was actually going to see Dad his grave in the dirt, as my youngest would say. So morbid, with my younger sister, and we're both sitting there visiting Dad, and I just started reading the book to Dad, and my sister was there, and she didn't know what this was. I just started reading it, and I'll tell you one more piece of information, that's it. One character is based on my dad, and when I started talking about this character, my sister just started bawling. She was like, oh my gosh, who wrote this? Who wrote this? So I knew it was just so special then, and maybe we weren't just being biased, me and Kelly, because we thought it was so amazing and we were so in love with it. And Kelly was just awesome and incredible and sent it on to publishers. And she knew, because she's already a children's author, all the steps we had to take in order to, get this thing going. And goodness, it was so fast. We heard back. So from a few months, we heard back from a publisher from the few months from the start of the idea. Dad only passed away in January. So I'm recording this now in June. And it was, it would have been a month or 2 after Dad passed. So it could have been March even. So it went from March or February to June, At the start of June when we signed this contract, it happened so fast. And so from the start of the idea that I'd explained to Kelly to signing a contract, so I ended up signing the book publishing contract almost exactly 5 months to the day since Dad had passed. So he passed away in January 11. I signed the contract on June 12th. So one day after his 5-month anniversary. And I know that the timing had to be right to create this story. And of course, know that I never wanted Dad to go, but it's something that we all have to go at some point from this earthly realm. And I know that this story wouldn't have worked or been as special as it was had he still been here. Like, it was all divine timing. It needed to be after he passed for me to realize how important this was. And that has just made the book so much more special and magical. And I will share to you much more as soon as I know that I can. But this whole situation with the book got me thinking, can you imagine what I have missed out on should we both have not followed our intuition? Like, Kelly has had similar feelings the whole entire time as well. She wanted to add me as a friend. She just felt like on Facebook, she felt like there was a friendship that could have been there, and it did happen. And she could have very easily have said no when I approached her about this, but everything in her gut was also telling her this is something that needs to happen. And it's just crazy. Like, the ideas that we've both had the whole way through have been so on point. Like, there's been not one disagreement. It's been like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. And that's exactly, it's bizarre, but not, because, like, I'm woo-woo AF. So it's crazy, but not crazy. I can also believe it at the same time. Even though I love to write and I love kids' books, I love children, a kid's book wouldn't have made sense to the analytical brain to me whatsoever. But when we let go of trying to control things, of trying to make sense of things, and we just follow our instincts on intuition and trust, and allow the things we want or that we desire to come back to us in ways that we would have never expected, this is when the magic really can take place. Because look at what has happened. This has been a dream for both of us. Since I was a kid, I've always written stories and crazy stories, and always dreamt of being able to be able to create a book one day. I never thought it was going to be a kid's book. I thought I still might, write some type of book or whatever. But just I just can't even, look, I have no words. Can't even explain that it usually works out so much differently than what we think it's going to work out. But a lot of the time it's even better. Like, this is even better. So what exactly is intuition and where does it come from? So technically, I think your intuition and your higher self, for example, so your higher self, whatever it is, a lot of people use that term as well, is something that comes from your soul and your soul's guidance, trying to steer you in the right direction and get you onto that path and achieve the greatest version of what you can be. And your guides are a separate entity who also have the greatest good intentions for you at heart. And there's 2 different episodes that kind of go into, so I've got, if you haven't listened to previously, I think it's episode 5, which is called Psychic You. That is about a little bit more about intuition and psychic senses. And then I also have a separate episode, I think it's episode 4, on spirit guides. So they're 2 separate things if you're interested in those. But what is what? Who is who? Where is coming from where? Is it coming from your intuition? Is it coming from your higher self? Is it coming from your guides, this intuitive information that you are getting? This is a skill I am still mastering myself, because what I can gather when I go in and ask my own guides is that they aren't bothered. They don't have an ego. They don't really care whether the information that you're pulling is from your intuition, if it's from them, if it's from your higher self. And you can complicate the crap out of things and try to decipher and separate all of it. And I'm sure there are lots and lots of resources out there on this. But when I do tune into my own guides, it's like they don't care. As long as what you are channeling or the information that you are getting is on love of light and of your highest good, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. Whether you are asking to get information from your higher self, you might go in with an intention, or whether you are asking them, and you might feel it as in an increase in your heart rate or that gut feeling and think it's from your intuition or your soul's recognition, or whether it was them that fed you this information, or it was them that you thanked, or it was your higher self that you thanked. They don't care as long as you listen to the higher guidance and actually act on these feelings to make the best of yourself while you can, while you're here in this body as you, for this one time that you get to be you in this incarnation. Then they have done their job. They do not care. So look, you might have a better interpretation of how that all works, but it's something that I just haven't even looked that deeply into, because I just trust that the information I'm getting is from the right place, because that is my intention. I am of good, so I'll go with that. And intuition feels different for everybody. The combination of signs will never be 100% the same formula from one person to the next, because we are not the same as anybody else. So how do we figure out how intuition feels for you? So this is crazy, right? When I have my psychic mentoring clients, or I'm running a program at the moment called Guided, which is all about, like increasing your, psychic abilities or getting better in check with your spirit guides. But whenever I ask people, like, how does intuition feel for you? What does it feel like when you think of when you know an answer should be yes, or your intuition is saying yes? Do you know how many of them are like, you know what? I have never actually taken the time to take notice of how intuition feels for me. And it is so common that people have never taken notice. So common, and I get it, yet it's so incredible at the same time. It's like, how can we not have taken notice? And the thing that so many people ask about, and that is so important, but we have never taken the time to slow down and figure out how intuition feels for ourselves. And this is only something that, even for myself, has only been the past couple of years when I've really got the hang of it. Still questions sometimes, and that's just, part of being human, right? So let's try and help you figure it out. Go back to a time when you knew you were in the wrong situation. So I want you to think about it right now. Maybe it was a job that you shouldn't have been there anymore. Like, you knew, like, now thinking back to it, you're like, oh my gosh, why did I hang around in that job for so long? Like, I shouldn't have stayed there for so long. Maybe it was a person or a partner that you had the wrong feeling about, like, or a situation that you just knew that was going to turn out bad. Maybe you had a partner that you had this inkling that they were cheating on you or something, and try and remember what it felt like in your body and how it felt for you when you knew this situation was wrong. So for me, it's easy for me to talk about the last job that I had, because I just remember that feeling so clearly, and it was right before I jumped into all of this spiritual stuff. And even though my last job, it served its purpose, right? Like, I loved it for the time that I was there. But I knew when it was time to go. And for me, what that felt like when every inch of my intuition was trying to tell me to get out of there, I literally felt sick to go to work. So this is when your intuition is telling you no. I was no longer excited in the slightest to go to work. And there is no reason why I shouldn't be. It was a beautiful place to work. The people that worked there were amazing. The pay was good. It was a great job. I was not being mistreated in any way. It was just my time to get out. But it really hurt with every ounce of my soul to be there. I felt sick. My stomach felt wrong and knotted up. I had this tight feeling in my chest. It literally felt like my soul was dying. Just sorry to get so dramatic on you. But this is what intuition feels like to a T when it's screaming at you to get out of a certain situation, or there is something that you are not meant to be doing. And although analytically it was not a great decision to leave that place, it was a massive leap for me to leave financially. And I didn't have any steps in place. I didn't know how it was going to work out if I left or what I was going to do. I just knew that it was time to get out, and I trusted my intuition, because for me, I could not stand to stay feeling like this. I don't want to have anxiety, and this was literally manifesting into anxiety, because this is what it feels like a lot of the time when you shouldn't be somewhere. Your entire body, your entire navigation system, this is what's telling you when it's time to get out. And if I hadn't left my job at the time that I did, where I am now wouldn't have happened as quickly as it did. I definitely would have been depressed by now, for sure, if I would have stayed there. And when you feel this way, when you get yourself so worked up and you feel so wrong about a situation, it can be impossible to tune into your intuition, because your guidance won't be clear from you until you free yourself from this situation that you're not supposed to be in first. And until you take that first most important step, which is to get out of a place where you shouldn't be. So I guess if you can think of a time that's you maybe, and I'm sure every one of you has had a situation in your life where you felt this way. Think back to that time. Maybe even when you get time, note it down and write out how it felt for you in your body or in your emotions, how they manifested. It might have been in anxiety. It could have been in depression. It could have just been in dark, down in the dumps. It might not have been to that level yet, because you might have been smarter than me and just got out of there when the first inkling started. So in the spiritual world, they have something called the feather, the stick, and the brick. And the feather is like when you get light little nudges, which are like, time to get out of here. It's time to go. Here's a soft little message from spirit or from your intuition. Time to leave. And then you'll get the stick, which is like a little bit more harsh. Okay, you're starting to really not like this now. Here's a little stick poking or prodding you. Time to leave. There's better things on the horizon. And then you still don't listen to your intuition, and it's literally like a brick in the face. Like something will happen, like the rug will just be pulled out from under you. Like you have to get out of here. Like this is done. Like something will happen. Like you'll get fired, you'll get made redundant, and you'll think it's the worst thing ever, or someone will start bullying you and it just pushes you out. And you think, what a shit, crap situation. And it's literally like a brick in the face. But then in hindsight, usually, give it a few months' time, you're like, oh, I needed that brick. But if we follow our intuition, it doesn't have to get to that point where it's so rough. So feather, the stick, and the brick. So that's to a bad situation, right? Now I want you to think of a time and note it down if you can, because when we start taking notice of these things and consciously taking notice is when we get better at it. So think of a time when you knew that something was the right decision, or you made a decision in your life and you were like, oh my goodness, thank goodness I followed that, because how this worked out was, it's just been so amazing. So I had a client recently that signed up to to Bloom, my psychic mentoring program. And they said that they just jumped into it without even really knowing what it was. They felt so excited. It felt so good in their body. They didn't even look at the content properly of what was happening in the program. They didn't even look at the amount. They just went, bang, I'm going to do it. And this is a perfect example of how intuition can feel really good, and how it feels for you when you are making the right decision. So even sometimes it's scary, right? So before I did one of the biggest psychic development programs that I did, went for like 4 months. And before I jumped into it, I was a little bit terrified because of the financial contribution that it required. But at the same time, it excited me. I was also scared because I thought, oh my goodness, I might change so much and I'm not going to be relatable. All my friends are going to hate me and I'm going to be so weird. And I had all these stupid human thoughts in my head that we do. But then I thought about not jumping into it, and it made me feel like really sad and really disappointed. So my heart felt happy and excited, and how it felt for me when I actually jumped into it was my gut does this little churning thing where it just feels, when you feel really excited and your stomach kind of like has butterflies. And it's like my heart rate increases when I think about it, and I feel really happy and excited. But at the same time, my brain is also and this is where we've got to start trying to decipher between what is our own just silly human brain, which yes, we do need that for certain things, but sometimes it just gets in the way. Our silly brain, which is just like, oh, what if this doesn't work out and you've put in all this money and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't even know why I was doing this program. I thought I was just doing it for myself. I thought, this is just for me because, of course, who doesn't want to increase their intuition? I didn't realize how this was going to turn out. This started me on my very first journey down the spiritual rabbit hole, being the best bloody journey I've ever been on. But so that's my example of how it feels for me when I did something that I knew was 100% right. That, oh my goodness, when I think back to it as well, I think, wow, imagine if I had never done that program and cared too much about the financial money, which, it's come back. It's come back. I've made it back, right? So note these feelings down. Note how it feels in your body. You might get goosebumps. You might get tingles. It might just be that settled feeling in your stomach. It could be your heart rate. You could get happy. You could get excited. Whatever it is, note that down, how it felt for you when something in your gut felt right and it turned out right. So this is an example of intuition. We all have it. We all have this internal navigation system. We just forget how to use it. Start yourself an intuition diary today if you are fully into this, and start documenting outcomes when they happen. So start documenting what you thought might have been an intuitive choice and what happened when you listened to it versus what was the outcome when you didn't listen to it. Do it every day and you will, even if it's like, so there is an exercise, you can do this every day for 30 days if you're really, really keen, depends how keen you are into it, and you will start to notice all these similarities and become very, very good at knowing what is your intuition and what isn't. And eventually you'll be taking these big leaps in no time. If you are one of those people that gets so caught up in your own mind sometimes and you're just not sure, I actually found oracle cards or tarot cards super, super great for me in the beginning when I wasn't trusting my own intuitive gut feelings. Like I might have this gut feeling, right, that I need to rest. Like I need to just chill out. I need some me time. I need to slow down. But then my brain was going, oh no, you can't do that. You've got to do this for your kids. Your kids come first, which of course they do. But if you don't put yourself first, then you're no good to your kids as well. And I had, these feelings, but I was like, I don't know which is my head and which is my gut. Pull myself a tarot card, right? Or an oracle card. And it says rest and rejuvenation. So oracle cards are a really great way to, especially in the beginning, be able to see in physical form that your own intuitive feelings are correct. Oh my goodness, that is exactly what I've been feeling to do, and I'm seeing it in physical form, validation right in front of me. So this is why oracle cards, I just love them. At the start, especially when your own brain is questioning too much, pull yourself an oracle card or a tarot card once a day, just to check in with yourself, with your intuition, and this also helps in building it. So talking about taking leaps, right? Knowing the complete outcome of how something is going to work out is absolutely a human thing. We, of course, like to know how something is going to work out, like is it going to work out and how it's going to work out. We just want to know all of the steps right now. And this is something that even I want to know. I want to know, because it's scary taking leaps. But especially since I've started giving readings, Spirit so often says, more often than not, that they're only going to give out the next step or reveal the next step until after you've taken the first step forward. Because we need to learn to trust our intuition. We need to learn to trust them in the universe. We need to learn to surrender and stop trying to control everything. It is actually a big part of why we are here and how we become mastering or becoming the own creator of our own lives and our own destinies. This is how we grow, by actually surrendering and letting go a little bit. This is how we expand. It's our belief in ourselves and the universe or the God or the angels or spirits or your spirit team that helps us to grow. And this is why each one of us is here, to learn, to grow, to expand, to awaken, and then to teach others. So why don't you try taking one little step forward and trusting Start with the small things first. And then the next step, you'll find once you've completed this step, the next step will come up. Keep following the breadcrumbs as you go. It's only usually 1 or 2 steps at a time your intuition will give you. So an example of this is, and it's not always going to make sense to you, but just trust it's going to work out. It always does. And it turns out even better than you thought. One example of this in following the breadcrumbs or picking up little pieces was the Enchantress Circle, which I spoke about before, which is my free woo-woo Facebook group. When I was doing business coaching, I kept getting this idea dropping in, which was start a spiritual support group. And I was like, this doesn't even make any sense to what I am doing. I am supposed to be business mentoring or business coaching. Why would I randomly start a spiritual support group? Why would I do that? But it kept coming up. I didn't know why. I just knew that I was drawn to this, and the idea of it really, really excited me because everything spiritual excited me. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm just going to do it. And I started this, I started the Enchantress Circle. I started the spiritual group. I had other people jump in and do lives and teach, about fun stuff like card reading and crystals and oils. And as I slowly started to step into my true self of who I believe I was, meant to be and come here to do, which was eventually started doing readings, which was, months and months after I first started this group. I had this amazing supportive community already there waiting for me, and my first clients were all inside this group. It was like this could not have turned out any better. I had these beautiful people that were already following and supporting me and knew my story, knew my journey, and were ready to catch me as soon as I was ready to step out of this spiritual closet. So if I hadn't have started that group when I felt that idea drop in, I wouldn't have had it would have taken me 10 times as long to get clients going and to get work started. So just an example of trusting, and it always works out better than expected. I've got just so many examples. I don't even know if I can go in and tell all of them. But look, I'll give you one more example. When I went looking for this house that I'm living in now, so this is a really nice story as well. It's a mixture of using your intuition and also asking for help. Be clear with the universe, be clear with your guides what it is that you want. I said, I want help in knowing when I find and look at the right house, that I know that this is my house, right? I need to know. And so this is a mixture of intuition and asking my guides for help. And I had this intuitive feeling that it was going to be near a lake, which is in my area. I just had this feeling every time a house came up that was near this lake. I was like, oh my gosh, we have to go and look at it. Is this the one? Is this the one? No, that's not it. And then I got to the house that I'm in right now. And months prior, I had said, oh, come on, just give me a sign. I want to know when I'm going to be at the right house. How am I going to know? And without realizing, after I'd asked that, within a week or so, I'd had this dream, well, not dream, but in between asleep and awake and this was before I was even, doing readings or anything like that. This was like 3 years before I was doing readings. I'd had this dream or a clairvoyant image of a pink flower. I'd opened my eyes in the middle of the night, and I can't remember if it was, oh gosh, what do they call it? I forget every time. I don't know, gerbera. Maybe it's a gerbera. I don't know. Anyway, it's a pink flower. And I opened my eyes, and this pink flower, clear as day, this is one of the times that I'd seen something in my clairvoyance, which was outside of my mind's eye, floating in front of my face, beautiful pink flower floating down. I could almost reach out and go to grab it. Like I could see it. It was so clear. It would not fade away, this beautiful pink flower. And I remember waking up, it eventually disappeared and going, what does this mean? And searching it everywhere online. What does pink flowers mean? If you see them, I knew it was a sign for something. I had no idea what. Couldn't really find anything on the internet, Google, that resonated with me. But when we went looking at houses, and I found this house, and I looked around, and I was like, oh my goodness, this house, you can see that lake that I intuitively had a gut feeling that my house was going to be near this lake. I could see it. The view is beautiful here. Like I love this house. And I said, oh my goodness, this feels so right. This is it. But guides, where's my sign? And I'm not even joking. As soon as I said that, I looked up, and this huge tree that was completely covered in that pink flower, whatever it is, geranium gerbera, I can't remember off the top of my head, was just blooming right in front of me, that exact pink flower that I had seen in my clairvoyant image in between asleep and awake stage. It was blooming and right there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the house. Anyway, so many offers to be put in. We ended up getting the house. So that is a beautiful story of a mixture between intuition and asking your guides for help and receiving it. So thank you, spirit guides, for that. I knew it was my house. So that's it. And you might say, you know what, intuition is scary. It's scary taking those leaps, and it really is. So start with the smaller leaps first. I get it. In the beginning, start with the smaller leaps and document it and how it felt, and your trust will start to grow and your leaps will start to get bigger. And before you know it, you're going to be flowing with life, and it gets so much easier and more beautiful. And you look at everything and understand differently, and following your intuition just makes everything more incredible, and you're in awe, that things could just turn out even better than what you imagined. And don't forget, it's also the right mix of intuition and action. So your masculine and your feminine energy, if you're familiar with that, which is, yes, you could have amazing intuition and know exactly what step you need to take, but it needs to be mixed with the masculine, which is the actual action taking. Like nothing is going to happen if you don't actually take the steps and do it. So it's the right mix of action taking and intuitive feelings, and keep on flowing with this and keep on going. So you might start with something small. For example, when I talk about something small, it's like on the way home from work, you have a gut feeling to go left, but then you went right. And you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm in a roadblock. My gut feeling said to go left. If I'd gone that way, I wouldn't be stuck. It might be a gut feeling to get out your comfort zone, and you've had this idea to sign up for Pilates or yoga or pottery or like an art class or something. Try it with something small and see how it works out for you. Like it literally could be you're always going to the same restaurant, and then you decide, your intuition says, let's try this one, and you try it, and it's the best bloody restaurant you've been to, and you're like, thank goodness I got out of my comfort zone and I did something different. I had a friend who all she wanted to do, she had this gut feeling for ages, was to do like a pottery class. She never did it. When she finally signed up and did it, she found this amazing talent for it, and now she's she makes these like ceramic earrings and things, and she's got her own business out of it, and it's the best thing she ever did by starting this one pottery class that she had no idea how that was going to unfold. So that's just an example of when we have small little gut feelings. That's not a big risk to take, right? And look how it turned out for her. Start with the small things. And the opportunities that life can open up for you really are incredible. And I'm not saying, start with something completely drastic like taking out a second mortgage if you've never done this before. Start with the small things first, and you will just get better at knowing how it feels for you when your intuition is right and going with that. So I hope that this episode has inspired you to at least give something small a try. Life is too short to be miserable for even one day, even the way, like thinking back to that job, I spent too long in that state. People always think about the worst, but what if it doesn't work out? We should be thinking about the opposite, but what if it does? Imagine the possibilities if it does work out. You don't always need to know the entire outcome of something is how something is going to turn out. Quite often it turns out much better than what you even think. Start with the small steps and go one step at a time. You don't need to have the whole entire thing planned out. Try following your heart. There's something really amazing and liberating about letting go of the need to try and control the outcome or to control everything or how it's going to happen, and just letting go and trusting and believing that it's going to work out. The heart always knows, and that's where the magic happens. I'm June Mack, and I wanted to thank you for tuning in to the Fully Woo podcast. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have had you here. You can find me over at junemack.com or on all social media as Ms. June Mack. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much if you could please subscribe, rate, review, and share. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a privilege to be in your ears.